A lot of people are getting surprised that diversity and inclusion budgets are facing the chop. Not only do I think it's predictable, I think a lot of the people complaining contributed to the problem. I'm Dr. Jonathan. I work with organizations to make them inclusive, and I'm on a mission to help 1 million people like you to make your workplace inclusive. Get your pen and paper ready, because we're talking about why I don't think you should be surprised that DEI budgets are getting cancelled. First off, let's be clear. When I say cancelled, I mean having resources removed. This can be time, this can be money, this can be attention. This can be anything that you think you need to create an inclusive workplace. As a reminder, we think of inclusion as a systematic business strategy to ensure that everyone shares the same advantages and benefits. Everyone can perform, everyone can belong, everyone can reach their potential. And for some people, this doesn't feel like a priority. This episode was inspired by a post from a member of our audience, Meg Crumbine, and I hope I'm pronouncing her name correctly. She made a post on LinkedIn that linked to an article called "What Layoffs Reveal About Big Tech's Commitment to DEI." Now, this article alluded to the business case for diversity and how this can help tech firms. Now, keep that in mind. I'm not going to do a breakdown of that article, but let's take a little trip down memory lane. We've been here before the murder of George Floyd, before the black squares, before the unprecedented creation of diversity and inclusion roles. Things were winding down. For diversity, do you remember 2020? Do you remember just after we started to realize that COVID-19 was a big deal? Do you remember that we had a similar narrative? People were cutting their DEI budgets, people were shelving their initiatives, people were losing interest. Let's be honest, a black swan event, like a pandemic, does force people to think about their priorities, and inclusion was not one of them. Why? There's lots of reasons, but I want to highlight the issues that the industry created for itself. So let's pick 7 things that you've heard me say before. Inclusion has a fallacy problem. People use fallacies to make a point. For example, if you don't have 50% of women in your leadership, then this is evidence that your organization discriminates against women. That's not enough information. That's a fallacy. It's misleading. Inclusion has a platitude problem. People rely on empty platitudes instead of saying useful things that you can share with others. We should hire the best person for the job. It doesn't matter what color you are. Everyone is equal. These are platitudes, empty words that get thrown around a lot. Inclusion has a propaganda problem. People talk about the business case for diversity as if it's the truth. It's not. It's propaganda that people spread. Some data supports it. Some data doesn't. Inclusion has a performative problem. People would rather act like they're trying to build inclusion than actually building inclusion. Inclusion has a proxy problem. People use false proxies to present things we can see as a replacement for things that we can't. That's why things like awards and lists are used to indicate that people are inclusive. They must be inclusive if they won an award, right? Inclusion has a rhetorical problem. For me, this is one of the biggest ones. According to Greek tradition, there are 3 ways to influence a person through communication. The rhetorical triangle: ethos, an ethical appeal; pathos, an emotional appeal; logos, an appeal to logic. It's common for inclusion leaders to ignore ethics, they often ignore logic, and they rely heavily on an emotional appeal. Now, you're going to recognize this by people using guilt and anger to motivate people. Now, it works well in the moment, but it's not great for long-term trust. It's often a signal for incompetence or, in my mind, a narrow perspective. Now, none of this is a secret. None of this is hidden. The people doing this are heavy on events. They're heavy on moral posturing, and they're heavy on talking about how passionate they are. Since 2020, we have observed a lot of what I've just said in private spaces and in public spaces. These things aren't a secret, these things are best practices, and these things don't work. Don't get me wrong, there are businesses and organizations that don't care about diversity. They don't care about equity. They don't care about belonging. They certainly don't care about inclusion. But the way inclusion work is practiced and, dare I say, celebrated, makes it easy for people to ease off when the attention diminishes. And the attention always diminishes. It's easy to blame systemic inequality, but not enough people want to own their own contribution to the problem. Too many bad actors have made it difficult. This includes the DEI leaders. We started a book club because not enough people read books. There are people in global roles leading inclusion with no experience, no relevant background, no incredible skill, and they're not trying to get any better. I want you to think about how many other jobs that would be possible for. Now, the funny ones of you are thinking about elected government officials. You're probably right, but let's look at how that's turned out for us. When it comes to organizations, I have real insight into this. Before I was on my mission, I was an accountant. Now, even if you didn't have an accounting qualification, to be the top accounting person in a business, you better be experienced or it's a non-starter. And I'm talking years and years of technically rigorous experience. In my role as an accountant, I worked with the people running the business. If you were responsible for a cost center or a profit center, I'm the one who managed your budget for you. I'm the one who cut your budget for you. I'm the one who was told to find $3, $4, $5 million. I'm the one on top of the numbers. I'm the one on top of all of your costs. I know how you spend it. I know when you spend it. I know what you spend it on. I would review your profit and loss account, I would cut your budget, and then ask if you agree. Now, you don't have a choice. You don't want to do it. You actually need me to help you. I need that 5 million from several lines. And when I say lines, I mean costs. I'm going to have it, and it's a matter of you telling me what you can live with. Now, you're not going to be happy, but here's the thing. Most people aren't able to justify their costs to a standard that people who don't know about it will care about. That's why they get their budget cut. They have a weak track record, they're not doing what they said, or they rely on emotional appeals. They were always so vague. Doesn't seem fair, does it? But I can tell you that the people who were vague, they got their budgets cut. This is why I keep telling you about evidence-based inclusion. It's pragmatic and it's practical. I want you to think of evidence-based inclusion as a thorough system for making better decisions that considers the scientific literature, data from your organization, stakeholders affected by your actions, and professional expertise. This allows you to pick up what everyone else has missed. This allows you to raise your standards. Evidence-based inclusion raises your standards, and that's in line with our own values to operate at the highest possible level in order to set the standards for others to be judged. The person with the highest standards is the leader, and it stops you from being vague. Let me give you an example because I wrote about this in a recent post. I said, here's how you can get really specific right now. Think PICOC. P is for population. Who are we talking about specifically? I is for intervention. What are we planning and how? C is for comparison. Who or what are we comparing ourselves to? O is for outcome. What do we want to happen? And C is for context. What are the circumstances? This allows you to get really specific. This increases your chances of getting a result you want. This allows you to defend any decision you make. And people like me, who are going to cut your budget, we leave you alone. It allows you to be really specific and it allows you to build trust. It raises the standard of everything you're doing. This is evidence-based inclusion and it's tactical. So instead of saying, we want more diversity at work, you can say, we want more Asian women in full-time equivalent senior leadership roles to increase by X% within 18 months. We'll achieve this through lateral hires, Rooney Rule style panels, and amending the bonus package of hiring managers. This project is going to be piloted in the UK finance team and we'll review the results. I'm oversimplifying, but you get the point. This answers some important questions and it makes you really, really specific. So let's revisit that PICOC. P is for population. Here we're talking about Asian women in full-time equivalent senior leadership roles. I is for intervention. Lateral hires, Rooney Rule style panels, amending the bonus packages of hiring managers. Comparison is ourselves 18 months prior. The outcome, we want Asian women in full-time equivalent senior leadership roles to increase by X% within 18 months. And the context, we're going to use the UK finance team as a pilot. That's a generic example that I've created just to share with you. We can all sit and pick holes in it if we wanted. But can you see how that makes you more specific than the people who are saying, we're trying to raise awareness? Now, some of you may be thinking, Yes, but Dr. Jonathan, you said that you need that 5 million. You had to find it. Yes, I did. But think about it. The kind of person who's doing work to that standard, who is that accountable, they're never at the front of the queue. Remember what I said earlier? I know how you spend it. I know when you spend it. I know what you spend it on. Even if I didn't care about inclusion, I would have to take you a lot more seriously. My point is we need to move away from low standards, not being precise, not being consistent, not being accountable. These are things that make you vulnerable in an organization. And if that's what inclusion looks like where you work, you should not be surprised if people want to withdraw their time, want to withdraw money, and want to withdraw their attention. There's too many bad habits out there, and it's made it easy for people to withdraw. I like using evidence-based inclusion because it raises your standards and it draws people in. So let's wrap this up. What are the key messages here? 1. The DEI bubble burst was postponed, but only for a little while. 2. DEI experts have contributed to the demise of diversity, equity, and inclusion in the workplace. And 3. Protect yourself with evidence-based inclusion. So what do you think? Do you recognize these bad behaviors in your workplace? Get in touch or leave a message. I would love to hear from you. If you've learned something from today's show, then give us a 5-star review and a comment wherever you're listening to the podcast. It helps other people like you to find the show. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next episode.